Hey, what's going on, guys? Harry here. First video that Frank and I have put up in quite a while, so excuse me if my voiceover skills are a little bit rusty. So getting right into it, this is the beginning of my powerlifting meet prep for the next meet I'm doing coming up in November. This is going to be the third meet that I'm doing this year, which is something I've never done before. The most I've done is 2 in a year, and that was back in 2013, and I didn't never really peaked properly or anything for a meet, so never did a specific program. I believe that whole year I was running Wendler 531 and just took like a deload leading up to the meet and didn't really do anything specific to peak in order to hit like true maxes. So this is the first year that I'm doing 3 meets, and then I'm like properly peaking and tapering and doing like all of my training as good as possible in order to put up my best performance on meet day. So the past 13 or so weeks, I believe, have been like my off season, air quotes, and it went pretty well. Volume, I just kept it pretty much as high as possible. Managed volume as much as I could, but also varied intensity. I think I hit an AMRAP earlier, like after the first 8 weeks at 85%, and those went pretty well. I don't really remember what specific numbers I hit, but I've been dieting now, not too like extreme, just for the past like 6 or 8 weeks. So I've been cutting down from like my usual walk around weight, which is like 95 kilograms. I compete at 93, which is 95 is about 210. So right now I'm about 90 kilograms, which is 198 pounds. And my goal for this meet is to compete at 88 kilograms, which will be like 195 pounds. So it'll be like 10 pounds under the weight class. But I think it's really going to help me improve my Wilk score, which at my last meet I hit 409 Wilk. So my goal for this meet, not really any specific numbers in terms of squat, bench, and deadlift, just as strong as possible, and to improve my Wilks as much as I can. So I mean, anything above 410 I'd be happy with, but we'll see if I can get around like 415 or 420 and see how that goes. So everything this week has felt good. I didn't take a deload or anything before starting this prep, so I think my last deload was about 5 weeks ago. I wasn't feeling too good in my last 4 weeks of my off-season training, but after this week I feel like the intensity was a little lower than I was used to, so it was nice to kind of give my body that break for the week. Working with the coach I've worked with for the past 2 meet preps, who is Joe Stanek, who is an intern at the Strength Athlete and has his own coaching company called Novo Training, and been working with him now for about a year. So we really have a good idea of what's going to work for me in terms of peaking properly for a meet. So another thing I wanted to talk about was my bench. So as you can see here, there's a good angle to see my crotch, but also to see my grip width, which I've brought in a little bit. You could also see from this angle specifically that I'm getting a little bit more leg drive on bench, which is something that I've always struggled with. And the thing that ended up working for me in terms of that, I know in the past I've talked about all different kinds of things I've tried in order to get some leg drive, but I just kind of focused on pushing through my toes a little bit more than pushing through my heels, and that's allowed me to transfer power a little bit better into my upper body and just get my hips moving a little bit and just get leg drive in general. But also I brought my grip width in, which, as you guys know or may not know, in 2014 I tore my labrum in my left shoulder, and it's really given me problems pretty much ever since then. So I've always looked for different ways to work around that problem. I brought my grip in, brought my grip out, and nothing really seemed to happen. And so far it's been comfortable for the past 13 or so weeks with a narrower grip. I decreased my bench frequency to 2 days a week from 3 or 4, which I've done in the past, and I'll probably increase to 3 times a week just to get a little bit more practice about 4 weeks out from the meet, but that's up to my coach at this point. And I've been doing shoulder pressing, which you guys saw a clip of before, twice a week. So every bench day I also do that. So the frequency for overall pressing, both vertical and horizontal, is the same 2 times a week. And something else I wanted to mention about my grip, or about my shoulder, something that's been helping me. I've I've been doing a lot of internal and external rotation with resistance bands, which I've done in the past, but now I'm just making it even more of a priority during warm-ups and pretty much whenever I have access to a band and a pull. So I could do like from the 90-degree angle and also from the side angle to do internal and external rotation, just to make sure that I'm training my rotator cuff and strengthening those muscles as much as possible. And I've also been doing a lot of push-ups. So I've been doing probably like between 100 and 150 push-ups a day lately, and really focusing on a protraction of my shoulder blades at the top of the movement. So just moving through more of a range of motion than you would on a bench press, just because you keep your shoulder blades tucked pretty much 100% through the range of motion on a bench press. And I've just felt like this has created a little bit more overall stability in my shoulder joint, which I can never complain about, because that is something that's given me an issue now for probably 2 years at this point, which is September 2016. I'm pretty sure September 2014 is when I had that injury. So definitely more variation work in terms of the beginning of this contest prep being 8 weeks out, and this meet prep, and doing pauses on these movements. This is deadlifts here, and the reasoning for doing pause deadlifts here was to work on my positioning. The bar sometimes gets a little bit out in front of me, so this is just going to help me maintain a little bit more of a neutral spine and allowing the bar to be closer to my shins at all times. And then I'm also doing pause squats, which I think you guys will see right here. And again, just learning to keep my core and everything braced in the bottom. I really do use a pretty good stretch reflex out of the bottom, so I tend to accelerate on the downward movement when I'm like 2 or 3 inches out of the bottom position. So this just allows me to control it a little bit more when on my descent and maintain that core stability all throughout the range of motion, especially at the bottom. So that'll help me, I think that'll help me keep my back in a more neutral position, and then allow me to not good morning the weight up, which I tend to do sometimes as the weights get heavier. But overall, I was really happy with the way that everything moved this week. The weights were nothing really too heavy. I think my heaviest bench was 255 for a set of 3. Heaviest squat was 405 for a set of 3. And heaviest deadlift was 495 for a set of 3, which you guys will see in the last clip. And everything moved at what I would call like an RPE 6 or 7. Maybe some movements were like up to an 8. And I mean, besides that, things are going to definitely ramp up over the next few weeks, and RPEs are going to get a little bit higher. But I'm happy to be starting this meet prep out with a little bit easier training, just to kind of let my body get used to this frequency and volume. And then as we start to progress, I think that things will be moving even better than they did this week, which is a good sign. Dumbbell bench is something that I'm going to keep in my program, at least for the beginning of this prep, just to, again, alleviate the shoulder problems that I tend to have with the higher bench frequency. And I keep my elbows a little bit more tucked on these than I do on a regular barbell bench press. So this is just more comfortable on my shoulders, but it gives my like chest, shoulders, and triceps a similar stimulus in terms of hypertrophy and just muscle breakdown as bench press does, as normal bench press does. So again, yeah, overall, really happy with the way that things are moving. This exercise is something that I've really been working on over the past 13 or so weeks of my off season. Sometimes I keep my elbows a little bit more tucked than I do here, just again to protect my shoulder. So I mean, if you guys have shoulder problems, have had injuries in the past, I recommend trying these out. You could bring your elbow a little bit more out in front of your chest and shoulder in order to kind of alleviate some of the pain. Another exercise, overhead pressing exercise that's really good for shoulder health, is the landmine press. So you guys could look that up. I think I've had it in some of my older videos. But again, just definitely looking for ways to work around the shoulder injury and just keep things feeling good and stay as healthy as possible. So this was the last training day of the week, 5 days I'm training. So it's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. Some weeks I'm sure I'll do like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday, Friday if I need that following weekend off. But just happy with the way that things are moving this week. I'll get a little bit more in-depth videos. Hopefully in the next few weeks, maybe do some vlogging, show you guys some like food and stuff that I'm eating. But overall, happy with the way that things are going. Thanks for watching the video, guys, and we'll see you in the next one. Leave any questions and comments and things you want to see in future videos down below. Thanks, as always, for the support, guys.